Okay, so we're going to discuss today what is Lag Boimer. It's not a subject that could be discussed really in a shir, in 5 shiurim, in 10 shiurim. It's from the Soida, from the Soidas Shebesoidas. But we're going to look at it from one of the key aspects, one of the core aspects, and hopefully over the next half an hour, 45 minutes, we're going to be able to address a little understanding. We'll actually understand why Be'ikil Lag Boimer is not so much our understanding, our acknowledgement that we don't understand. And let's hope at least that by the end of the shir, we'll be able to get to the acknowledgement that we don't understand everything, that we don't necessarily understand. To begin the concept of Lag Boimer, so Yomi Lulav Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. What's Yomi Lulav Reb Shimon Bar Yochai? So we know since we're young children that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai on Lag Boimer on Yud Ches Iyar, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was nostalgic. What was the story? The story actually says in the Idra. In the Idra Zuta, what's the Idra? The Idra is a group. Idra literally means a group. There was a group of 10 people, including Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai and 9 Talmidim, and they went together into a home. And Reb Shimon Bar Yochai taught them the deepest soidas of Kabbalah, the deepest soidas of what he knew. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, let's just talk about when he lived. You have to understand when he lived. He was living in a very, very difficult time for Yiddishkeit. After the Churban of Bayis Sheni, so about 70, 80 years later, there was a revolt of Bar Kokhba, which was originally very successful. And they conquered Yerushalayim, and they kicked the Romans out of Yerushalayim. And they began minting coins already. They were running a country for approximately 3 years. And Bar Kokhba had the biggest, the Tanoim, many Tanoim went with Bar Kokhba. Rebbe Akiva, we know famously that Rebbe Akiva carried his Kalim. Rebbe Akiva felt his Mashiach. And after a certain period of time, after 3 years, the Romans sent tremendous armies coming all the way from England even. They brought in so many armies. That's how worried they were about this revolt. And after Bar Kokhba, after the revolt was finished, they more or less, they decimated Yiddishkeit. They were very, very, very concerned that this shouldn't happen again. And they began a serious redifus of the Yidden after the story of Bar Kokhba. And that's when they really made the takonos against some key aspects of Yiddishkeit, some very central things that became very, very difficult to live as Yidden. For example, that's when they asked Milah, that's when they asked the Torah Barabim. And Rebbe Akiva, who lives during this upheaval, they destroyed Yerushalayim. They cut down the mountain. They cut down the Harabayis. They chopped it down by 2/3. The Roman emperor gave the command. He realized that as long as the Harabayis is there and the Yidden could potentially rebuild the Beis Hamikdash easily, there was still a risk of revolt. So he partially cut down the mountain by 2/3, and he built over Yerushalayim a whole thing, and he put on the Harabayis a big statue. And he he asked learning Torah Barabim. So in theory, if there's no bris milah, if there's no Shabbos, if there's no limud Torah Barabim, so how are you going to practice Judaism exactly clearly? How are you going to do this? And this was a very, very big challenge that Yidden had, and it was a very, very difficult time for Yidden and Yiddishkeit. Rebbe Akiva. There was two groups. There was 2 ways of thinking. You had, for example, Yochai, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's father. He was of the opinion that we have to try and appease the Romans, try and make some sort of arrangement with the Romans. Let's see. We'll give and take. We'll negotiate. Yochai was of that opinion. Rebbe Akiva was very, very strongly of the opinion that b'shum panim v'oifen not to negotiate. And Rebbe Akiva taught Torah Barabim. And Rebbe Akiva was caught. He was caught, and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the Yochai's son, Reb Shimon, he argues with his father. He says it like his Rebbe. He says like Rebbe Akiva, that we have to fight them business off. It's a Gzeir Shmad, and we cannot negotiate whatsoever with the Romans. And Rebbe Akiva is captured, and Reb Shimon Bar Yochai goes to learn by Rebbe Akiva in jail. He risks his life to learn by Rebbe Akiva. It's a very interesting story, but just to understand when Reb Shimon Bar Yochai lives. Now, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai starts off learning in Yavne, still in yeshiva in Yavne. Eventually learns by Rebbe Akiva, who had his yeshiva in Bnei Brak. And eventually he has his own yeshiva after Rebbe Akiva is killed. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai has his own yeshiva. He learned on the Derech HaLimud of Beis Hillel. He was from that school of thought, as they say in English. And Bekitzer, and he has the famous story how he runs into the cave. But all along he was learning Kabbalah. So in addition, besides the fact that he's, I think, the fourth most mentioned Tana in the Mishnah, if I'm not mistaken, Stam Reb Shimon and Reb Shimon Yechai. But nevertheless, his key Indian, his core Indian is Kabbalah. And but we're trying to understand that he's living in a time of shrekliche redifus. They're really, really going after the Eden very, very, very seriously over there until the end of his life, until he leaves the cave. They're really going it's very, very difficult for the Eden. Now, Reb Shimon getting to the Idris, Reb Shimon calls together a group of 10 Talmidim, and they begin to learn Soidus HaTorah that he's never taught before. Now, he teaches it, and they finish, and after they finish, 3 of the people that were there, Nistalik, Reb Yosi, the names slip me at the moment, but 3 of the people that were there at the time are Nistalik, and he begins the new one. He begins the new limudim. See if I have the names of here. No, he begins the new limudim years later. He calls together the group again. One of them is Rebbe Lozer, his son Rebbe Lozer, and one of them is Rebbe Abba. And he says this is called the Idro Zuta, the smaller group. Now there's only 7 left. There's 6 plus him left, plus Reb Shimon Yechai left. And he begins to learn with them Torah. He calls them together and he says, Abba Ksoiv. Abba, write what I'm going to say. And this is when Reb Abba begins to write a lot of the Torah of Reb Shimon Yechai. He writes Pasha Reb Shimon Yechai as he's speaking, he writes. And as Reb Shimon begins to speak, you have the story. The Emma says, I'm a bit concerned to go through the story properly. I think I saw it here before. So I'm going to show them in a location, it's not my own, but he goes into, there's a limit to what we could go through over here because personally, the mikvahs are all closed over here and I'm not really excited about doing this. Not excited, I'm not doing this I'm not learning through the Idra, obviously, without having gone to mikvah. But just for this part, so the kid, he starts teaching the Tifa Soidus of Torah, and as he begins to teach these deep Soidus of Torah, a fire comes around the house. And anybody that shouldn't be there has to leave the house, and everybody leaves the house. And Reb Shimon begins to teach Torah, and he begins to teach and teach and teach and teach and teach, and there's a fire, and the fire is burning, and he's teaching. And at some point, he says the words, Mechaye Achayim, and he goes quiet. And the fire eventually dies down. And when the fire dies down, they see that Reb Shimon was nostalgic. And Rebbe Lozer cries, Ovi, Ovi, and they take Reb Shimon and they make the levaya, and there's arichas hasipur. There's arichas of the story over there, and they take him to the Ma'orah in Meron. He was nostalgic in Meron. They take him over there to the Ma'orah in Meron, the cave in Meron, and they bury Reb Shimon over there in Meron. And the story of Reb Shimon Bechlal doesn't end over there. There's for example, from the time Reb Shimon is buried in Meron, it becomes a base. The Tanoim, other Tanoim, they were there. For example, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, he goes to meet Mashiach. Where's Mashiach sitting? It's over there. There's a whole Maisa, Mashiach sitting over there, together with, there's a discussion between Rabbi Shua ben Levi and Eliyahu Hanavi. And they go to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. They go to his cave. They go to the cave where Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is buried to answer the question. Shimon bar Yochai was also a Zokin when he was nostalgic. But Kitzer, there's the entire story of Shimon bar Yochai's nostalgia, and he says at the time that this is Hilula, and he says that you shouldn't mourn my yahrzeit. Yeah, you should celebrate my yahrzeit. Ever since then, Lag B'Omer is a Yom Tov. Okay, what's the Yom Tov of Lag B'Omer though? Why does Shimon bar Yochai say to celebrate it? So he says because we know why he says to celebrate it. Yeah, because it's a Yom Hilula. It's Be'etzem, it's Yatzim B'Chayoy. But why by Reb Shimon bar Yochai more than by any other Tanoim? So the truth is like this. What does it mean, Yom Hilula to Reb Shimon bar Yochai? Lag B'Omer, Yud Ches Ir, is the Yom Hilula, is the day of the celebration of Reb Shimon bar Yochai. Now, in Chassidus, it's a Pashtus. In Chassidus, it's clear. They take it on clear. The Rebbe talks about this in Chele Gimel, in the Likutei Sichos. It's in the Ha'ara. It comes from one of the letters the Rebbe wrote in Igros. As the Rebbe wrote in I think Tafshin Tes, but I'm saying it's Chele Gimel in Igros, and it's printed also in the Likutei Sichos. But over there, it's clear that Lag B'Omer is the day of the yahrzeit of Reb Shimon bar Yochai. The day was nostalgic. It's clear. But there are others that say lav dafke. Could be it was like Boimer Taka, but lav dafke. Yoimi Lula, or not only lav dafke, even if you say its day was nostalgic, Yoimi Lula, the reason why it's a Hilula is not because he was nostalgic on that day. The reason why it's a Hilula is because that's the day he taught the deepest soidus in Soid, the deepest soidus HaTorah, the deepest soidus of Elikus, of how the world works, of how Elikus works, of the Eivishtr, in other words, of how we transcend the world, which we'll see soon. But how it all works, he taught the deepest in Yonim on the day he was nostalgic, and we're celebrating that which he taught. Some people say Bechali wasn't nostalgic on Lag Boimer. Could be he wasn't. Says, according to some opinions, it's got nothing to do with the Histalkus. It's to do simply with the fact that that's the day he taught the Idra, and that's the day he tells Reb Abba to write. By the way, this writing was so it was such a chiddush, you should write it. You have to understand, Reb Yehuda HaNasi is a Talmud of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. When Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is nostalgic, there's no Mishnah. There is other things. So, for example, Sifri, at least a large part of it is a Mechiltam. So, at least a large part of it is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So, there are things that are written, but not Mishnah. So, Zohar, which we'll get to not this year, but Zohar predates the Mishnah. It was written down before the Mishnah, but it's not for Amoinam. It's not for any of us. And eventually, it gets hidden, it gets buried, and it's only really discovered more than 1,000 years later, which is a whole story for another time. But the point is that the celebration of Lag Boimer is the Idra, is the fact that that's when Reb Shimon Bar Yochai teaches the Idra. According to some, happens to be that it could be that it happens to be today was nostalgic, but it's not. It's not in the Idra. He's nostalgic, so it's the day he was nostalgic. But okay, why would we celebrate that? Just what's the point? Let me ask you a different question. Suppose it wasn't the day he taught the Idra. Well, let's look at the year before he taught the Idra. The year before he was nostalgic. The year before he calls together the Talmidim, he calls for Rabbi Yitzchak, by the way, when he calls together the Talmidim. He says he promised Rabbi Yitzchak that he's going to bring him with him into Gan Eden. And therefore he says, Rabbi Yitzchak, go sort out your affairs, as they say, sort out your life, say goodbye to everybody, and sort out whatever you need to sort out, because come to my house, you're coming with me. And Rabbi Yitzchak's talking nostalgic that same time as Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. So what happened the year before? Was it a special day? So the avenue we're going to take discussing Lag Boimer, this says in Chassidus, two things about Lag Boimer. There's a lot of them. It says in Chassidus Chabad, two things about Lag Boimer. Number one is Yom Elul of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and the day he taught the deepest soidus. And number two, that it's Sfiris, in the Sfiris Oimer, it's Sfiris Hoid Shebahoid. What's the Sfir of Hoid Shebahoid? So let's back up a second. Let's partially discuss Sfiris, just for a moment. The Eibusha creates the world, yeah? There's one koyach. It's Oir. Oir HaPashat, it's Oir. But in every Oir, Oir is Hashbar, in every energy, let's call it energy, in every energy of creating the world, you have, it's all in each particle, in each part, so you have one, but that one is comprised of 10. Chabad, Chagas, Neim, Chesed, Gvur, Teferes, Netzach, Hoid, Yisoid, Malchus. We usually discuss it in our own nefesh, in our own midas, because if we understand it in our own midas, so it's easy when we understand it in ourselves. It's easier to understand it a little bit in the Olam Elyonim, in the Olam Ruchnim, and also because in our own lives that's where it's negeya. It says to learn the way it is in Ma'aser Merkava is very, very important because Dalas Elekei Avicha, but it's not. It's all about our own avodah and Badira B'Tachtonim, which we'll discuss in Mitzvah Shem soon. But anyway, so the Eibusha creates the world, the second Oir, but every Oir is comprised of 10 parts. Now, every time you break down that Oir, so for example, every time one thing creates something else, that second thing that it created is also comprised of those 10 parts. And then take that part and take it again a level lower, or do it sideways. In other words, if just like in a DNA, every time you break something, there used to be when we were kids, used to think that if you, I'm not sure I should say this, we used to think that if you kill if you cut a worm in half, as kids, no, cut a worm in half, so the worm continues to crawl. The nerves in the worm continues to crawl. We used to think that you cut a worm in half, it becomes 2 worms. Showing how many worms did we cut? It's number 1 or 2, but it's 1 or 2. You create something for something else. Your DNA, something is coming from something else. So everything is comprised of these 10. The kids. So everything in the world is comprised of 10. Yeah, good. So all the oilems, in every oilem itself, so every nekuda, every prat, everything is comprised of chesed, gvura, teferes, netzach, hod, yesod, malchus, each serving a purpose. Okay, what are the purposes? Let's not go through them. Let's discuss the middle of hoid. What is hoid? What is hoid? Lag ba'omer. Lag ba'omer is the sphere of hoid shebahoid. What does it mean? It's a sphere of hoid shebahoid. What does the sphere of hoid shebahoid mean? So hoid translated really. I asked many people. Translate me the word hoid, because hoid sounds like splendor a little bit. So the best English translation, I don't know English so good, since I'm not an English person, I'm not a person that knows the language of English, but the one that sounds the one that, as they say, is English. I don't have to look in the dictionary to understand it. Is the word sublimating? Okay, what is hoid? It's like this. Hoid means hoida'ah. Translation, not translation. The meaning of hoid is hoida'ah. What's hoida'ah? Hoida'ah is praise. Not really. We'll get that in a minute. But it's, you praise something. What's happening when you're praising something? Or hoida'ah means to say you're right. I was going to say you're right. So you have like this. You have an argument. I say one thing, you say something else. And I realize that I'm wrong. So I say, you're 100% right. What's my opinion now? What I had a minute ago? Or now that you've convinced me? If I'm an honest person, I have a new opinion. I thought one thing. I was wrong. In my opinion, now I'm wrong. Why am I wrong? Because you convinced me that I'm wrong. And now I know I'm right. Now I know that you're right. So how many opinions do we now have? 1 or 2? The answer is 1 opinion. Your opinion. The argument that we had the last hour was for one purpose. All my tightness the last hour, I was arguing with you a whole hour. All my arguments the last hour don't exist anymore. There's one opinion, and that is you. So you won. Netzach, you won. Then we have something else. I have an opinion. And you have an opinion. And we're arguing the opinions. Who's right? I don't know. I think I'm right. You think you're right. Now here's the problem. The problem is that we have to work together. Here's a sibbe shatia. We have to work together. It's roommates in yeshiva. So you have one opinion. Your roommate has a second opinion. But you have to work it out. You can't. What are you going to do unless you move rooms? Yes. What are you going to do? One likes it hot. One likes the light on. One likes the light off. Okay, so whatever it is. Yeah. So what do you do? You make a pshara. What's mean a pshara? You make an arrangement. You settle. I get 50%. You get 50%. If we sort out an agreement, we're each mevater a little bit. Who's right and who's wrong? In my mind now, we had an argument. One person says we should learn Nigla 3 hours a day. The other one says we should learn Nigla 4 hours a day, or whatever it is. Yeah, we have an argument. What should we do? And we negotiate. We come up with an agreement. We come up with an arrangement. We settle. We each give a little bit. We each give and take. So now who's right? Me or you? The answer is, you didn't convince me. My opinion is still my opinion. Ad kedei kach, I don't know where you're coming from. If it's a real argument, I don't know where you're coming from. I think you're 100% wrong. On the other hand, I understand that you have an opinion that is a justified opinion. If I felt that your opinion has no place whatsoever in anything, then if it's a little thing, then it's called being mavater. It's called midah. It's called being mavater. But what happens if it's a technical thing? We have to work together, And therefore I have to, and therefore I'm agreeing to something that I don't believe in at all. I'm agreeing with something that I don't believe in at all. If that happens, that I'm agreeing with something that you don't believe in at all, so then what happened? So if I'm I'm sorry, technology is not my strong point. So I agree with something that I don't. So I'm like this. If I disagree with it fully, then I've got no right to do it. Norvos, I admit, I understand in my mind that despite the fact that I don't know where you're coming from, your mahalach hamachshava, your way of thinking has a svar. There's a tzad to say this. There's a reasoning to say this. I don't understand it. I don't understand a word of it. But there's a way of it's a way of thinking. It's a justified way of thinking, justified enough that I'm able to negotiate with you. You know what I mean? So despite the fact that I'm talking to you, let's talk here, let's talk here, not a marshal that's negate any of us. Yeah, you have like this. You have a person. You have a politician, a party, a group of ministers. They didn't make it. They didn't get enough votes. They didn't get enough seats to be able to make their own government. So they have to now find another party. Yeah. No one's going to make an agreement with the Nazi party. Why not? Because they fundamentally disagree with them. Better go for new elections. Better not be prime minister. The Nazis are not allowed to. What they want is so it's so ugefrek that I can't make an arrangement with them. What happens if it's somebody that I fundamentally disagree with them in so many things, but I'm willing to admit that their way of thinking is a justified way of thinking, despite the fact that I fully disagree with it? If I'm willing to admit that they're a justified way of thinking, then I can negotiate. Okay, that's something that was hoid. So what's hoid? Hoid is like this. Hoid is hoidah. I agree. I admit. What does it mean? Not I admit. I agree. What's that? I agree. I agree. Not that I'm agreeing with your opinion. I don't understand what you want, but I'm agreeing that your opinion is right. Okay, that's in two people. Yeah, klar. I'm agreeing that your opinion is right. Now let's talk here, tifa. Let's talk here real hoid. Real hoid. Ultimate hoid. Ultimate hoidah. Ultimate sublimation, I think that's the word. It's moide ani, what we talk about in Chassidus. The ultimate putting myself aside, putting myself away, is understanding that as much as I understand, I know nothing. As much as I understand, I know nothing. Let's talk here. Let's be honest. When we learn Chassidus, let me ask you a technical question. Baal Shem Tov loved the Pashat Yidden, yeah? Love the Pashat Yidden. On the other hand, the Baal Shem Tov taught Chassidus. To the Toltes Yaakov Yosef, and to the Belev Yosef Baditchever. And yeah, the Baal Shem Tov taught Chassidus. No. Which one the Baal Shem Tov wanted? The Baal Shem Tov wanted the Tifa Avodah from Revolve Kitzes. And for that's what he wanted. The Tifa Avodah from his Talmidim, from the Chassidim. Or he wanted the simplicity of a simple Yid. What's the answer? Which one does Chassidus want? Simplicity? Sincerity and simplicity? Or Verstand in Elikus? Which one does it want? The answer is both. What does it mean both? There were some people in those days, there were people that Pasha couldn't read Aleph Beis. They grew up on a farm. You have some people that live like they're not Yidden, but you have some people in various countries that they grow up on the farm, they live on the farm, they die on the farm, that's everything they know, and they might know how to read, but their understanding of the world is very, very small. In those days, Yidden, they grew up on the farm, they lived in they Pasha couldn't read, lav dafke because they weren't so smart, but Pasha because they never had the opportunity. So those people, they served the Eibishter with sincerity. That was the best they could do. What's with sincerity? What's with sincerity? Azoi vil der Eibishter. Finished. It's what the Eibishter wants. I know that there's. I know different things. I know you know different things. But so what? This is what the Eibishter wants. This is what he wants, and I'm going to do only what the Eibishter wants me to do. Or does it? That's where it starts. That's where it ends. What happens though if I do know how to read? What happens if I do know how to open a sefer a little bit? What happens if I do know how to think? what happens? What am I going to say? Ich will nicht wissen. I don't want to know sincerity, simplicity. How does sincerity and simplicity work if I do know how to think? How does it work, sincerity and simplicity? It doesn't. It doesn't, because I know more than that already. The Baal Shem Tov loved the Poshet Yidden. That was, we'll see in a second what's the Maila of Tmimis. We'll get there. But that was the best they could do. They were by sincerity. Once you already know a little bit, sincerity at that level becomes impossible. What's pshat sincerity? I don't know another way. Azoy tut men das. Ich bin a lemele. Me fit me by the nose. They tell me what to do and I do it. That's what it is. But, right? That's what it is. Okay. What's wrong with that? Nothing. Well, we'll see soon where you could go wrong with that. But what's wrong with that is nothing. Not only nothing, that's what it's all about. Now let's say like this. And I learned the reason why we put on tefillin, even I even learned it in Shulchan Aruch. I learned the reason why we put on tefillin the Shabbat Amayach V'Alev. So now I know why we put on tefillin. So why am I putting on tefillin? Because I know why. I ask you, why do you put on tefillin? Shabbat Amayach V'Alev. That's really why we put on tefillin, and that explains to you why it's a black box, and that explains to you why it's meruba, and that explains to you why after these parashas, and that explains to you that the Shabbat Amayach V'Alev. That's really what it is. So we all know from Chassidus that be'etzem, the reasons we understand is because Eibusha was good to us and gave us reasons. But ultimately, those reasons are not the real reasons. They're not the real reasons. They're real. They're real in our, as they say in England, the expression is in our pea brains, in our small brains. That's the reason. Say that. That's the reason. It's a real reason. It's a real reason. Yeah, why do you have to wear a seatbelt? Because the policeman is looking. It's a reason to scare a kid that's not listening to the fact that he should wear a seatbelt because it's safe. Because be'etzem, don't tell kids not to wear a seatbelt because it's right. But you wear a seatbelt because it's safe. A kid is still not listening, so then you could scare him with the police and then work on getting him to wear a seatbelt. Why he's supposed to wear a seatbelt? But the real reason is because the police is watching. Of course not. The reason not to go through a red light is because there's a policeman. That you're going to get a ticket. The reason not to go through a red light is because it's very, very dangerous to go through a red light. So what's the real reason? Both are real, yeah. But there's the real reason, and then there's the real reason is also not because it's dangerous. The real reason is because you could die or kill someone. Says there's the deeper and the deeper and the deeper reasons. But the point is that so when I do know what I'm doing, I really know what I'm doing or not. That's Hoyd. Hoyd is saying like this. Hoyd is saying I understand that I don't understand a thing. That's Hoyd. I understand that I don't understand. I admit, I acknowledge that I don't understand. Ich leg sich weg. I put myself away totally to do moide ani. I am mevatel myself. I put myself aside totally to understand that as much as I understand nothing. Why will I learn Chassidus? What's the ultimate goal of Chassidus? The ultimate goal of Chassidus is to understand. The ultimate goal of Chassidus is like this. We, Baruch Hashem, grow up in a place where we do have heads a little bit. Something we understand, and therefore, because we understand that a little bit, we at that level we're not shaykh anymore just to do it. That's it. Not at the basic level. Let's put it like this. Be'etzem, we all know that we don't know everything. The only thing we don't want to do is admit it. We all know the leiv pnima, that our lives are something far, that's what's running our lives and what happens in our lives and what we know and what we don't know far more outweighs than what we do know. And exactly what happens in our lives is mamish not in our hands. We all know this. None of us. We don't want to admit it. We all, not only that, I'm talking to you. I know that you know that there's things that Pasha don't know. No, I don't know. You could help me in things that I can't, you can help me in things that I can't do myself. So why am I embarrassed to ask for help? Ask for help. People are embarrassed to ask for help. Why? Hoida'ah is a level where we're able to be fully comfortable in saying, I need help in this. And this I can't do. No one can do everything. No, and everything that we do, there's somebody that could probably do it better. And Hoidah is admitting what we know to ourselves anyway. Okay, so we've discussed Hoid. We know what Hoid is. Hoid is what? Hoid is the bittul. Hoid is putting us the acknowledgement in our own lives. Hoid is the acknowledgement that we don't know what we are, that ultimately that we don't really understand what's going on. That there's an Eibishter, and that we don't understand the Eibishter. And as much as we're going to learn, as much chassidus as we're going to learn, what are we going to understand? We're going to understand. So what's the ultimate goal of chassidus? The ultimate goal of chassidus is to learn so much chassidus and to understand so much that we're finally ready to acknowledge that we don't know what we're talking about. That's what it is. That we're finally ready to understand in our minds that this thing is way beyond us. That's the ultimate of chassidus. That's the ultimate da'as elokei avicha, to acknowledge, to realize, I don't know what's going on over here. I've got no idea what's going on over here. Lag ba'omer. Now, is Sfiras Hoid. Lag ba'omer is Sfiras Hoid. There's two things. Here what happens, there's two things. And it's something called Seder Zmanim. Seder Zmanim is time and place, is time. Now, in time, you have two things, okay? You have times that create a feeling, certain times that create the feelings, and then there are certain events that change time, that create certain things within time. So, for example, you have Rosh Hashanah. Let's say Rosh Hashanah that everybody feels, whether they're able to feel it openly or not. But everybody feels a certain. Let's talk the 9 days, yeah. Let's talk the 9 days because this is something, especially you have the halachas and everything. So you have the 9 days. 9 days is the time that's muchen leporanis. Why is the 9 days in the time that's muchen leporanis? The 9 days is times that bad things happen. Finished. Built into Seder's manner, built into time. The 9 days is the time that bad things happen. There are certain people, they know specific times you can do specific things. There are special times to do special things. Tesvav lachodesh would be a good marshal. Yeah, Tesvav lachodesh. The 15th day of the month. Kai Masira Bashla. When the moon is full, that's the very, very special time. Tell me, what about the Tesvav lachodesh that's special? What is it? Something happened on Tesvav that made it a special day? Or Tesvav itself is a special day? Tesvav itself is a special day. In other words, in the way the world runs, there are certain days that those days are special. Mitzadat, those days are special. Then there are days that things that happened on that day made something special happen. Anything that happens, the Seder Zman time goes again and again and again and again and again, right? So every time that day comes again, anything that happened on that day, remember, only where there's the limitation of time, only where there's the limitation, where time is limited, does the year Tovshin Pei not clash with the year Tovshin Ayin Tes? But if at levels where that time goes away, in the deeper levels of Elikus, where you don't have that limitation, the difference in Tovshin Pei and Tovshin Ayin Tes, where years don't make that difference, so then everything is happening again and again and again and again and again. So every time it's going to come, today's early Yud Zayin year, every time it comes, everything that happened on that day is rehappening and rehappening and rehappening. Yeah. So in Seder Zmanim you have two things. You have the day. In Seder Zmanim, the day in times that this day is special because when the Eibusha created the world 5,780 years ago, that day was special. Tezvav lachodesh, for example. Nothing special has to happen on that day to make it unique. And then you have other special days, which is that something once happened on that day, and that continues to happen. Yom Elon is going to that continues to happen every single year. It gets stuck in Seder Zmanim, and every single year that happens again on a higher level. It gets stuck again. It happens again and again and again. Okay. Now there's two things about Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is Hoid Shebahoid. Lag BaOmer, in the days counting, the preparation between Pesach and leaving Mitzrayim and having Kabbalah Satorah. So Hoid Shebahoid, which is, by the way, the last. We're not going to have time to get into this today, but it's the last level in Sfiris. It's not negea to Ma'aseh B'Poel. It's the last darga in Sfiris. In the aspect of Hamshachim U'Maila, but it's of not coming, not for the purpose of only coming into Ma'aseh B'Poel, whatever. But the day of Hoid Shebahoid, what is Hoid Shebahoid? Is total bittul. Total bittul. Full and complete bittul. What's full and complete bittul? I am willing to acknowledge, I'm willing to acknowledge that what? That what? So hoid, we said already, is acknowledging that I don't understand. Hoid is, I'm willing to acknowledge that I don't even understand. I'm not even at the level of understanding that I don't understand, which is all of us. To be able to get to the level, to understand, to fully understand, to fully appreciate that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I don't understand, is only for select tzaddikim, really. Not that we acknowledge that we don't really understand. To learn something and to say what I'm learning over here means that I don't know anything why I'm putting on tefillin. Or anything. Not only one thing that we picked up, we pushed and understand. Anything in the whole world, I don't know what it's talking about. That full bittul of being fully, there's no, my mind doesn't exist at all. My mind doesn't exist at all. That is something that only certain tzaddikim could do. Hoid shebahoid means I acknowledge that I don't understand why I don't really understand what I'm talking about. I think I have it all figured out. But I know, even while I think I have it all figured out, I know as a fact that I don't have it all figured out. That's hoid shebahoid. It's similar to moedim derabanan. You have moedim anachnu lach. Eibishter, everything that we have, all the good, everything that you do for us, everything. Thank you, Eibishter, for all of that. Nothing came from me. I put in work. I did this. It's all Eibishter. Eibishter, you do everything for me. What's moedim derabanan? Is what? Is also on moedim lach baruch kela yidais. Moedim derabanan is that we're acknowledging that we thank the Eibishter, that we acknowledge the Eibishter, and we understand that despite the fact that I don't understand exactly why it's like this, that it is, not why, that it's like this. I don't understand exactly that everything is the Eibishter. I still think I'm a little bit mixed into it. Nevertheless, I acknowledge that thinking is wrong. So the way I naturally feel, which is I naturally feel that I do have something to do with it, that way is wrong. That's moedim derabanan, and that's hoid shebahoid. That acknowledgement. Okay, now let's get to lag ba'omer. So hoid shebahoid is lag ba'omer. And Seder's manim. So again, we're talking Seder's manim. There's two things. There's the speciality of the day, regardless of anything that happened on that day. So in the you could say it wasn't like this from Sheishis Mebereshis. You could say it was like this only from when the Yidden started from Matan Torah. Okay, whatever. Different people say different things, but that's fine. But whatever the case is, hoid shebahoid lag ba'omer is a special day. Yud Ches Ir is a special day, regardless of the istalkus of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. In addition to that, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai on that day taught Nidar. Why did he teach Nidar on that day? Why is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's istalkus on that day? Because what day can you teach such Seidas HaTorah? What day can you teach such deep inyanim of the Pshitas and Elikus on the day that within the system of the day? Because it's hoid shebahoid in the counting, in Sfiras HaOmer. Because it's hoid shebahoid, because it's acknowledging that we know nothing, the more bottle we are, the more we can understand. Like in anything. If I start off with an agenda, I open a sefer, open anything. I want to be able to prove this. You can prove anything you want to prove. Prove anything you want to prove. I remember once in yeshiva, there was a certain mashpia that started with us, and he's a computer. He knows everything. And he gave us a whole bunch of mekoiros that based on these mekoiros, we should put tefillin on our feet, on our legs. And then when he finishes, he says, no, so I should put on tefillin, on our heads and on our arms. Right? Why? I gave you all these things. Say that you could prove whatever you want to prove. Right? Whatever you want to prove, you can prove. How are you really going to know what you're talking about? When you start up and say, I don't know, I don't know what's right and what's wrong. I don't know what's true and what's, I don't know. Let's learn and let's figure it out. The less you prepared you come, the less you have an objective, or the more objective you are. Yeah, the less you come with an agenda, to what you're trying to learn, the more you're going to get to the answer of what the truth is. So Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who's already on the darga, it's already in the darga of Hoid, already a tzaddik. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai on Hoid shebahoid, that's the day that Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is able to teach these things. That's the day he's able to bring these inyanim down to the world. The reason why Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is able to bring these inyanim down to the world, he lives in a time, Moshe Rabbeinu had mafsim. In his time, there was mafsim pashat. Not even that Moshe Rabbeinu was doing constantly. There was mafsim. There was besides Matan Torah and Kriyas Yamsuf. Even 40 years later, you're talking about the Beirishal Miriam and the Ananiya Kovid and living in the Midbar and the Mon and all these things that they're going on in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu when the time of the Torah. There's Nisim Geloyim. The B'Shim B'Yechai's time. There's redifus after redifus after redifus after redifus, and nevertheless, they're focused on the Eibishter. These things create a bittul. These things create a certain ability to be able to take in even more than pshat and then emes and then drush. You're able to pasha to have soid during that type of time. Okay, so now let's get back to what we were starting all the way at the beginning. So what's Lag Ba'omer? What's Lag Ba'omer? Lag Ba'omer is the stalkus of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. And the day that he taught the Tifste Soidus in Kabbalah. Why is it on that day? Because that day is Hoyd Shebahoyd. That day is the day where in the days, built into the day, is this bittul, is this ability to acknowledge that as much as I know, I don't know anything. And as much as I think I run my life, the Eibishter runs my life. We have to finish soon for two reasons. Number one, because it's already 43 minutes into the shir, and number two, or 41, whatever it is, and number two, because this is going to die soon, so we have to finish. So cook this anyway. But let's move this on first of all to why there's a simcha. So why is there a simcha like B'omer? What's the speciality? Why is there such a simcha? So there's two things. Number one, real simcha. When a person understands that there's simcha with an objective. Let's talk at something else. A person can come to a simcha, a very, very happy event, and there's something bothering him. It's really, really bothering him. So if it's a very, very, very happy event for him, he'll be able to push aside that worry to a large extent. What happens if it's a bit less of a simcha for him? So there's a limit to how much of the worry he'll be able to put. And based on the worry versus the simcha, it's going to fluctuate. The person can come to a big simcha and be very, very tzitrog, and something terrible could be going on in his life. And he could be very, very bothered by it. What happens if a person has come to the level where the pasha doesn't, everything's in Eibish's hands. He doesn't feel his life at all. He doesn't get upset. He doesn't get angry. It's all in Eibish's hands. There's no bigger simcha than that. Sincerity, simplicity, tmimis, this ability to acknowledge that I don't know anything in knowledge, or the same thing, I don't run anything in my life. This full bitochen, this full giving myself up to the Eibishter is a massive simcha. It's a massive simcha. It's the most calm, peaceful life a person can ever have. And when a person has that calm peace, that peacefulness, that calmness, that generates a tremendous simcha by the person. Aleph. There's a second thing. Tmimis can also be a very, very dangerous thing. Simplicity can be a very dangerous thing. It can make somebody naive. It can make a person follow pesiyam and it can make a person follow stupid things. Imagine a person, he's gullible, he's very sincere, and he believes anything you tell him. So you could tell him the most stupidest things, and he'll follow you. He'll believe you. He'll believe you. So we could start getting into examples, and I'm not gonna. Every example I'm gonna give, somebody else is gonna get upset. So let's not give examples. We can all think in our minds different examples. Yeah. You have people that believe the stupidest things. They mamish believe the stupidest things. So he's not going to do this and this and this. He's going to put himself into danger because he believes everything. So simplicity can also be a very, very big problem. In Avodas Hashem also. People could follow. Why would somebody follow Avodah Zarah? Logically, it doesn't make sense. Logically, it doesn't make sense. Why would a person follow Avodah Zarah? Because he's a believer. He's optimistic by nature. He's optimistic by nature, so he follows certain funny beliefs, and eventually you could follow Avodah Zarah. So there's simplicity. Simplicity can generate. There's simplicity, which is sincerity, which is pashat tmimis, that the Eibishter and dasidas and finished. Can also lead to very, very awkward things. Comes Lag Ba'omer, comes B'Shim Bar Yochai, Shimon Bar Yochai is matzal the person. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the koyach of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai is able to mevatel those gzeiros, those dinim, those bad things that will happen, because that will be caused by hoid shebahoid. Hoid is in the kav of gvura, so it's like gvura shebegvura. But those bad things that could be generated by sincerity comes Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, and he's mevatel those bad things. That's another reason for the simcha. Says it's the same reason for the simcha. One of them is that when you give yourself up to the Eibishter in Ganzen, when you understand says no, the Eibishter, the biggest simcha a person can have is when he understands that the Eibishter and das is das. That's all there is only the Eibishter. That's one simcha. Another simcha is that if Shimon Bar Yochai was celebrating even somebody who's chas v'shalom fallen into other things, if Shimon Bar Yochai will schlep him out of that. Reb Shimon, this chus of Reb Shimon will schlep a person out of all the clippers that a person could get himself into, also because of hoid shebahoid, because of sincerity, because of simplicity, because of tvimistikait in a bad way. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, this chus of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai schleps him out of that. So he's celebrating the ability to get schlepped out of it with chus hatzadik. So there's many other things obviously of Lag Ba'omer, but I think we've covered a little bit to be mesakim. We've covered a little bit that Lag Ba'omer is the day of the istalkus of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. And it's also the day that this day of the Istalkus. On the day of the Istalkus, he taught tremendous Torahs. He taught the deepest Torahs. Be'etzem, that was the core of his Torah, which is what he taught on the day of his Istalkus. The core. But he taught a lot of things. Interesting. Usually you start from the core and then it comes out. But because when you learn, you get to the core later. The core is Be'etzem, what happens at the end. And the day of the Istalkus is the day that everything, so all of that comes into one big thing on Lag Ba'omer. Why on Lag Ba'omer dafka? Why dafka on Lag Ba'omer? Simple. On Lag Ba'omer, because Lag Ba'omer is hoid shebahoid, that was the day he was able to teach that Torah, and that was the day, therefore, that he was nostalgic. Because he was nostalgic on the day that he was teaching that Torah, because that was the highest day of that was his highest ability of being able to teach. So all those together come in and create this Istalkus of Shimon Bar Yochai. Why are we happy on Lag Ba'omer? Because he taught the Torah? Yes, because he taught the Torah on that day. Why did he teach the Torah on that day? Because that day is a day where there could be, that's the day where you have the least personal self-feeling built into the structure of the day, and therefore when you have the least of that, you also therefore have the greatest simcha. And then we discussed that there can also be Reb Shimon Bar Yochai schlepping you out of the clippers, which is also a tremendous generating this tremendous simcha. That's one aspect of the simcha. It's Rosh Hashanah for Pnimius HaTorah. What's the difference in Rosh Hashanah, Pnimius HaTorah, and Rosh Hashanah for Chassidus is a discussion for a different time. But it's Rosh Hashanah for Pnimius HaTorah. Eibishter should help Taka as the Ben Ish Chai writes in his Pizmin, Teirasei Magen Lanu. His Torah should protect us, as I want to have the word of Teirasei Magen Lanu, that when you learn Chassidus, when you learn his Torah, when you learn Pnimius HaTorah, so it protects a person from anything that comes up from the outside. But the Eibishter should help Shmitaka Teirasei Magen Lanu, but Poel Mamash also, who Yamlitz Toiv Ba'adeino, he should Taka, as they say in Yiddish, he's a good better. It's not something you say on a Rebbe like Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Or good better. I don't have a better word for it at the moment. But Yamlitz Toiv Ba'adeino, Yamlitz Toiv Ba'adeino, and the Eibishter should help Taka that by Lag Ba'omer already we should be in Eretz Yisrael, and the Rebbe would on a parade. And I was hoping to get into the parade a little bit to explain a little bit what that has to do with Lag Ba'omer. But we're not going to have the time. The difference between this nakuda, this is be'etzem dira b'tachtonim, this struggle. Let's try in a second. The struggle between what you know is right, says Elikus, and between personal feeling, which is Elam Hazeh, and there's that constant struggle. And the more you can get Elikus, be'etzem that this struggle is what life is about. That's why the Eibishter put us here. That's the avodah v'beinani. And the struggle within the world is everybody's avodah, even the tzaddikim, to elevate the world, to make the world into a dira b'tachtonim. So be'etzem Lag Ba'omer, when you have hoid shebahoid, Lag Ba'omer is bittul. Hoid shebahoid is the bittul of Welt, is the bittul of is the acknowledgement that yes, I'm a table, yes, I'm a chair, yes, I'm a person, but nevertheless, it's actually I'm a likus, and the acknowledgement that although I don't feel it, that's what it is. That's be'etzem the parade, going out into the street, and saying the street is a street, I'm a person, the sign is a sign, but I know that the street is a street, but it's really a likus. I know I'm a person, I feel like a person, but really it's a likus. The sign I'm holding is a sign. I feel it's a sign. I drew the picture, but nevertheless, I know But be'etzem it's a likus, even though I don't understand, even though I don't feel it. That's be'etzem that's the nukud of the parades also. But the Eibush help, the Eibush as the Eibush help that we should take. And we should be ready in Eretz Yisrael. We should be by the time of like we should be in Eretz Yisrael. And then we won't need to understand that we don't understand. We may have a bittul telekus. When we be a Molar is Eis Hashem, and Molar is Eis Hashem. What we're talking the whole shir over here. The Molar is Eis Hashem is in order to cause that we should have a proper bittul telekus. There should be